Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. All glory comes from daring to begin. All glory comes from daring to begin. The poet Eugene Ware gave us these words. As we kick off every new year, we set New Year's resolutions and goals like I talked about on the last podcast, and I was urging you to move your thinking from all the things you're going to do and start with who you want to be. Let your being drive your doing. Let it be intentional, purposeful, and then followed up with action. I hope you'll go back. If you missed that, I hope you'll go back and listen to the last podcast about being before we do. So this is your helpful nudge now, after you've heard that and you've begun a new year and the new year is now off to a racing start. This is your helpful nudge to dare to begin. Dare to begin the first actions that will help you be all that you want to be in this new year. That project you've been wanting to tackle, that dream you have that's been in the back of your head and your heart that is still hanging in the background, the next actions necessary to end up, to help up your game in your role at work, your business, your career, that organization that you want to volunteer for or that you've been thinking about, you want to help serve, the conversation with someone in your life that's past due, the relationship that you want to seek, or just the putting yourself out there in the world in some form or fashion with relationships, with your work, with a dream that you have, putting yourself out there in the world when you know that it's easier to just not put yourself out there. Whether it's personal or work or a dream or learning something new or going outside of your comfort zone, my nudge for you to begin this new year is dare to begin. Beginnings are powerful. They move us from our comfort to discomfort. And so I know what I'm inviting you to do is to get uncomfortable, and that it's way easier for all of us to stay in this place of comfort. But beginnings are powerful. They move us from comfort to discomfort. They require courage to move outside of the norm, outside of that comfort, in order to seek that discomfort, that growth, that learning. They require courage. Beginnings are not the end. We know that. That there certainly is a process that every beginning will require if the effort will ultimately become a success. If whatever you're going to start or whatever you're daring to begin, for it ultimately to become a success or to become a thing or just to get finished, we know that there's a process that comes with that. My good friend Jon Acuff, who wrote a great book called Finish, is all about that once we start, there's a process, and we have to make sure that if you want to execute, you have to finish. But oftentimes things don't ever get finished if we don't dare to begin first. But everything doesn't exist. Nothing exists until someone dares to begin. Study the path of every entrepreneur, artist, athlete, musician, theologian, public servant, or executive in your company or a company that you've watched. There was a pivotal beginning to all of them. A moment of courage, of exploration, and determination to begin. And the reality is, daring to begin is not a singular act. It may begin with a singular act, but once you're on the journey, you realize that every day becomes a new opportunity to dare to begin again. Olympic swimming champion Michael Phelps dared to begin swimming at some point in his life. At some point, Michael Phelps said, I'm going to dare to begin. I'm going to put myself out there. I want to swim. I have a dream of swimming. I'm going to dare to begin and to get into the pool. But then in order to be a champion, he had to wake up each day and dare to begin again. Dare to put the next actions into place. Steve Jobs, in his early years at Apple, every day was a new dare to find the next actions to stimulate progress. And in our personal lives, every parent on the planet, whether they consciously know it or not, has to dare to begin again today for their kids. Every spouse has to dare to begin again for their relationship. No matter what your relationship was yesterday or last year or 3 years ago, or the dynamics of your family or your relationship with your kids yesterday or last week or 3 years ago, all of us have to dare to begin again today in order to help the relationship, the dynamic, grow into what it's going to become. Daring to begin again. Finding the next actions, finding the newness and seeking newness, and finding those ways to stimulate growth. Recently, I was asked about my own career as an author and as a speaker and as a consultant. And it was asking me, how did I get started? And how is it that all of a sudden you're just able to be writing books and speaking across the country and around the world and consulting with teams and organizations that I'm so lucky to get to do? But I had to remind them that all of it began that you don't just wake up and get the opportunity to do all of that. That first I had to dare to begin. And for me, that daring to begin, that I've certainly, if we traced back in all of our lives from when we were young children, there were little dares that we were doing even back then, I'm sure. And my whole career, if I really looked at it and studied it, that there were dares along the way of decisions I made and things that I did that I learned from, where I had to then kind of dare to put myself out there and begin. But this journey of writing, speaking, and consulting certainly began when I dared to begin and dared to try to write my first book. To put myself out there, and many of you that know that story of going to airports, 7 airports over the course of 7 days across the United States without leaving the airports, and attempting to write the book, Step Back from the Baggage Claim. And putting myself out there. And then I remember the process of where I was writing this book and nobody knew about it. Nobody outside of my wife and my parents, a couple people in my life, nobody knew that I was writing this book until finally it got to the point where I had a copy of this book that I was writing after I'd quit my job and dared to put myself out there. Then I had to dare again. And I still remember sending that first draft of the book to a few trusted people in my life, friends and family members and people professionally around me, and beginning to say, now I'm daring to share this with them. And then I remember that when I finally and luckily, gratefully got the feedback from them, which was, you have to be willing to share this further. Please. And certainly there were adjustments, there were tweaks, there were things that feedback that I got to make it stronger and continue to work on it and make it better. But eventually that feedback was, you have to dare to begin again and share this in the world. And I still remember that first day when the very first book came out and it was out there and people began to buy it and people began to get it and then people began to read it. And again, every day I'd wake up with this idea, there's thought, where when you're putting yourself out there, anyone in the world can say they disagree with you. Anyone can call you an idiot. Anyone can poke holes in what it is that you do or what you say. And yet the question is, are you going to dare to begin again today? And now as you fast forward 11 years, there were 4 different editions of that first book, Step Back from the Baggage Claim. Then my second book, Remember, and my latest book, Thermostat Cultures. Across these 11 years and growing, every single day is another day where I wake up and say, how am I going to dare to begin again today? What is it I need to continue to learn? What is it how I need to continue to grow? Am I going to dare to put my thoughts and feelings out there even more? When right now, things are wonderful. Things are great. I'm lucky to be where I am. But what are the next ways that I need to dare to begin? I'm so grateful that the messages have been resonating, that they have been spreading, that the work has been working in the sense that it's been engaging the minds and hearts of people and has been stimulating progress in teams and organizations, that I've been contributing to that growth, and that the messages continue to amplify and engage minds and hearts in the world and add value to people and teams. But the only way that has happened, and hopefully will continue to happen, is if I wake up each day, look myself in the mirror, and say, how am I going to dare to begin again today? So this is your helpful nudge. As we entered a new year, and as I talked about last time of who is it that you want to be and in this new year, and let your being drive your doing, this is your nudge forward. And so, like always, I want to provide some questions for you to ponder for your journey. With the spirit and the hope of this is that these questions engage your mind and heart and give you something to think about this week, and certainly carry with you as you dare to begin whatever you're involved in next. So some questions for your journey. What do you want to dare to begin? What is it that this new year, what is it that you want to dare to begin? What relationships need your next actions? What relationship needs your next actions? What's the next dare for you? What next dares are needed in your life, in your career? How will you dare to begin again tomorrow? Remember, all glory comes from daring to begin. We must move beyond the status quo of everyday life, have the courage to seek progress, and the willingness to take ownership for the next actions that you want. Dare to begin. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.